welcome to All the Woo orientation episode. I am Suzanne and I am here with Mychal. And the first thing I feel we should know is, Mychal, what is your definition of woo?
Oh my. I actually wrote down a list for all this kind of thing because I started to think about it and how much it encompasses so much. So, see, my list is metaphysical things.
It's from A to Z.
It is. Yeah, but I'm not going to list it in alphabetical order. I'm not that good. But I will say, okay, metaphysical, spiritual items, quantum physics, aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, multi-dimensions, ghosts. I don't know. I'm sure I'm missing some things, but I think people are generally getting the gist of the kinds of things that are included in the woo-woo with all of that. Suzanne, how about you?
It's interesting because while it feels like your definition is everything outside of the box and very wide and very expansive, for me, I think it's a very intimate thing in a way because it's when for me, it's the methods and the mechanisms and the ways that when you as an individual try to talk to the universe and the universe talks back.
Makes sense. So you ask a question and all of a sudden you turn on the TV and something pops up relating exactly to what you just were asking about.
Things like that, reading the tarot cards and being like, this harkens back to an experience in my childhood that nobody else knows, but it gave me such a great warm feeling. And I feel like that feeling is being given to me again, those kinds of things. So very intimate, very personal interaction.
Right. I think I get it. All right. So I'm going to turn the tables on you, and I'm going to ask the next super important question, which is, why do you refer to it as woo?
Peer pressure.
From me?
I actually am. For me, it's less about calling it woo, and it's more about self-identifying as woo-woo, which is a newer sort of statement about myself, which is not to say I wasn't woo-woo, just, I guess I'm kind of coming out of the closet here.
You and me both.
And so what about you?
I thought that it was very interesting. I became privy to the term woo-woo a few years ago. I had not heard that term previously because before somebody asked me about that kind of information, I just immediately was like, well, metaphysical, spiritual, that kind of thing. And then somebody I think was referring to me and was like, oh yeah, woo-woo. And I was like, I like that. I like it because it is simple, it's easy, it encompasses so much. People immediately know what it is that you're referring to or what kinds of things that you're referring to. But beyond that, I like using the term because it is more lighthearted in its delivery, so that whoever I'm speaking with, if I say I'm like, oh yeah, I'm very woo-woo, that somebody, first of all, immediately knows what I'm speaking about. Number two, realizes that I have a lighthearted approach. I'm not trying to come at them and push it on them. I'm also aware of the fact that, they may have certain opinions or judgments about that, and, that's okay. And I'm not going to take that personally because I also understand how a lot of people end up seeing those kinds of things. So that's why I like using the term. Not only is it easier and shorter to say, but on top of that people get this idea of kind of your stance on it, and it can still be a comfortable conversation or still be lighthearted, and we don't have to kind of focus on that.
And so where did you meet the woo?
So for me, this was a very defining moment, very, very defining moment. So really important to note that I don't know that a lot of people realize this about me is that I was raised Roman Catholic. I went to parochial school, and so I had a very structured upbringing as far as all of that was concerned. And there was a moment when I was in 5th grade, and we were trying to do the math on how old you are when you're, so like 11, I guess.
We went backwards. If you're 18 when you're a senior.
Yes.
Surely by 5th grade, you're 11.
We're thinking 11. Yes, somewhere around there.
So our answer, we're sticking it to.
Yeah. Other than that, 5th grade, I went on a trip with my parents. No, not my parents, my grandparents. And we were visiting family, and we went and stopped in Jamestown, the original town that's there that you can go visit. And we went to a church. I had a Polaroid camera that I was taking pictures, and because, back in the day, that's what you had. And I made my way to the front of the church where the altar is, and I turned back around to look at the entrance. Above the entrance, there was a crest. I think you were saying the crest of James the First?
Well, I was just guessing, since it's Jamestown, if there was a crest, it would be James.
True. British crest of some kind. And so, for whatever reason in my mind, I thought my mom would really like a picture of that. Why, I have no idea. It's not like
Michael's mom is not known for collecting royal crests.
Yeah, exactly. I don't, I'm 11. Whatever.
It's pretty.
It's pretty. So I took a picture of it, and once it developed, I could see, and I thought to myself immediately, oh, I moved the camera. And, I didn't take another picture because I had limited film to work with.
Because back in the day, Polaroid was like, you have this many pictures.
Yeah, that's it. You got to use them sparingly.
You got to get it right or not get it at all.
Right, exactly. So I went ahead and I put it in the pile and called it a day as far as that was concerned. But then I moved on. At the end of the day, my grandparents, my brother and I, we were staying with my father's cousin, who is a professional photographer and videographer. He had taken my pictures and was looking through them. He called me into the room and asked, what happened when you took this picture? And I immediately wrote it off as, oh, yeah, I know, I moved the camera, that kind of thing. And he's like, no, you did not move the camera. Let me tell you why. And started to go through and explain that because everything was crisp and clear, everything was in focus. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see that. So just kind of paint the image of what this is. It's doorway, there's a crest above. So there's pews on either side of the aisle. And there's people there at, touristing, as you do, standing around and looking at things. And all of that was clear and pristine as far as visuals are concerned.
So if you're driving right now, I want you to just take a breath because it's about to get a little bit woo.
First of the woo here. The first thing that I would like to point out is that there was supposed to be light streaming through the entryway of the church that kind of streaming, kind of not. So what ended up happening in the image is that the light divided into 4 sections, so like a cross, so horizontally and vertically into 4 sections. Each one of those sections of light went off and did their own thing.
They became light snakes.
It really was. It kind of, because they were not following the same pattern or anything. They were doing their own thing. Beyond that, they were interacting with what was there. So, as an example, one of the streams went through somebody's legs and came up and wrapped around the strap of a woman's purse, and then went out and moved out of the image.
Pickpocketing like snakes.
Well, we thought maybe the lipstick. Who knows? We don't know. But it was something that he's like, light, first of all, doesn't do that. And when it divides, it doesn't divide in 4s and across kind of pattern. And also, they weren't following the same trajectory, right? And he's like, that's not normal. Light doesn't behave that way. And so he was the first one to point it out to me that I think that you took a picture of a ghost, which, little 11-year-old me.
So not only light snakes, but ghost light snakes.
Ghost light snakes. Yeah. I was so freaked out. I didn't see them as snakes. I didn't even think that it was multiple ghosts that were in the picture. I thought one ghost in my mind. But even at that, I was just this was my background of my upbringing, was just that, man, I hope the ghost is not mad at me for taking a picture of it. That he's not going to come and haunt me or make me feel bad. I didn't mean it. I spent the whole night, I could not sleep, up just apologizing to the ghost for taking a picture of it, not knowing that it was there. And I was so sorry. Yeah, such a ridiculous thought in hindsight now.
No, just points out that perhaps some of that Catholic upbringing,
True.
which also applies when you're an only child, because if something goes wrong, there is no one else to blame.
That is true.
I'm the only child listener. She has sibling.
I do. I have a sibling, but yes. Well, you could blame it on an animal if you had a cat or something.
Yes, convenient cat. But if you don't have a cat, it's been a lifetime going, it wasn't my fault. Yeah.
Sure. What I do have to say, though, that in hindsight, looking back, like that was the first where I would define it as like a cosmic 2x4 coming and like hitting me over the head with things, which I love. I prefer that, honestly. I don't recommend it, though.
This is her prayer generally, is just make it really clear, like hit me with a cosmic 2x4.
Yeah, make it super clear where I can't deny it or talk myself out of its existence. And because previous to that, I think I know I had a lot more exposure to things that are woo-woo, looking back at it. But at the time, I was explaining it away because it also, when I would speak up or tell my parents or whoever it was, this happened, it was always like, oh, it was your imagination, or it was a dream, or, your kid, your, story, oh, haha, like you're not taken seriously on what it is that has happened. So then I would just dismiss it because nobody else was taking it seriously.
And generally speaking, that is a horror story trope of the little kid who, wakes up in the middle of the night and finds the headless person at the bottom of the bed and was just like, and the parent's like, oh, nothing's there. And it's just...
Exactly.
So parents, listen to your children when they tell you there's a monster under the bed.
Yes. Suzanne, how about you? Did you have a defining moment or no?
For the things that I consider woo to be, which I said is all of that kind of intimate understanding. But if you look at history, there's always been fairy tales, mythologies, Bible stories, all of these things pointing out the interaction between humanity and otherness. And I grew up devouring all of that information.
Yeah.
My first goal list as a child was I wanted to be a teenager, because teenagers were really cool.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a go-go dancer. I didn't know what go-go dancers did, but I knew they had really great white boots.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why. And a mermaid, which seemed like a very reasonable progression to me.
Yeah.
Which I think just points out that my line between fantasy and so-called reality was very fuzzy, and it really hasn't clarified a whole lot since then.
At this point, I am going to jump in really quick to let our listeners know, in case you don't know what Suzanne does for a living.
I made that mermaid dream almost come true.
Yes, very true. Yeah, she is an author. She's an accomplished author and has written many, many books. So she uses that creativity and her knowledge of all of those things on a regular basis.
So I grew up kind of in that sea of thinking all of these things were real. I am a military brat. We lived overseas, and one of the identifying characteristics of one of the bases I lived at was that it was haunted. It had a structure on it that was haunted. And I was fascinated by that. So all of these things were there.
Right.
They just were kind of the way the world was outside of the bubble that I lived in. I never doubted any of the things, but they never presented themselves to me.
Right. You were not being hit by a cosmic 2x4?
I did not know.
Okay. That's probably good.
But I think I was also already in a reality where I accepted that was real. So I didn't have to be convinced it was. Like, I knew it was. It just wasn't my reality yet. And so my progression is more acknowledging
Right.
that I'm, to continue the analogy, breathing water, and be like, oh, this is what it is. This is, praying and hearing answers or finding connections or just the synchronicity that has absolutely always flowed through my life
Right.
that I did not acknowledge as woo.
For those of you who have not read Suzanne's books, I can tell you that there is a strong element of, I mean, there's so much of kind of what you would consider woo-woo kind of things that are in there. Hence, we mentioned mermaids, but, time travel is also a thing. With all of that being said, that she does, it's very important to her, I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to speak for you, especially that you're right here. But it is my understanding that you go through great lengths to try and give a very scientific explanation to what others at surface level might just see as being a woo-woo event.
Right. And the reason why I do that is because in any story, the progression of the character, the growth of the character is the most important part. And so I didn't want to remove anything from human agency, from my character being able to become a hero, that might, I don't know, be skipping steps or whatever. And so it's less about the stories being woo and more about the environment having that potential.
Right.
And you as the reader having choices of being like, oh, these could be explained this way, or it could be explained this way, but it was nudged by the hand of the universe.
Right.
Kind of thing. So I do not feel like I have as neat an explanation minus the 2x4. I think I was just, I was already underwater. And for me, it was a realization of, oh, this is what water is.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm breathing water.
Right.
So I feel like we have sufficiently drowned that analogy.
Well, would you say, though, that then how you approach it in the books is kind of how you approach it in your life, as far as that there can be a scientific explanation, but also that there's, as you're saying, being nudged by the hand of the universe on top of it?
I believe that's absolutely true, but I also think that that's kind of a limited perspective, and it was a little bit me trying to still be like, no, but I'm serious. I'm not unicorns and glitter, even though, dear listener, I am absolutely mermaids and glitter.
She does enjoy her sequence, yes.
But I didn't want to be dismissed. And I think that was probably the reason why I did not self-identify as woo-woo.
Yeah.
Because in the realms that I was in professionally, that just was not, I mean, I had an editor who flat out would be like, we don't want anything to sound too woo-woo.
Right.
Which is the first time I heard the phrase. And just like you said, it's an immediate awareness of what that means, even if you haven't heard it before.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, all of this is more about being, you know what, this is who I am. Like I said, coming out of the closet, embracing the fullness of what I believe and how I see the world. And it's not that I didn't before, but there is a difference of, and anybody who has ever had to stand up and identify as a particular tribe, there's that moment of like, you know what, I'm actually standing for this.
Yeah.
And so that was the big transition for me of being like, I am Suzanne Frank, and I am definitely woo-woo.
Oh, yeah. I think I do my introduction to people when I start to gingerly try to explain to people, because let's say they started to talk about a topic that I'm familiar with and that I seem to have a little bit more information about it than they do. So, but before I get into it, I have to give them the explanation. Like, yeah, like, just so you know, you probably don't know this about me, but I am I'm super woo-woo. Like, that's how I kind of self-identify, just kind of let people know. And I think for me, part of doing this podcast is, like you're saying, to come out of the closet and also to explain a little bit more about all of those things, because I've had so many for myself, so many personal experiences that we'll get into through, a lot of the episodes, probably not even all of them through all the episodes, where I've essentially been hit by the cosmic 2x4 so many times. And at the same time, I want it to be known that, if you, I don't know, don't believe it or anything like that, I completely get it. If I hadn't experienced these things myself, I would be super skeptical. Absolutely. And I would expect anybody else to be as well.
She is, after all, a Virgo.
I am a Virgo. I do like my facts, for sure. My facts and information.
And I feel in a way that I am standing in for all the people that I have been, the ones who were attracted but didn't want to be seen as flighty.
Yeah.
Or the ones who are kind of like, no, I talk to God every day, all day long. Like, we just hang out and be like, oh, that's what woo is. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And all the permutations in between and the things that, are yet to be. But that we wanted to give you, dear listener, a space where you could be the third person in our conversation in a way of hearing Mychal's experiences and my perspectives, the things we're both big researchers. We're both really into the details of things and very wide-ranging interests.
Yes.
And
we're not even going to cover all of them in this first round of A to C, just so that you all know.
And constantly shifting, constantly adapting, constantly changing, and that be kind of a safe space, a fun space for you to listen, learn, question. I would say that our superpower is curiosity.
Yeah. And I'd also have to say, you can take it or you can leave it, but at the very least, we just hope you're entertained.
So thank you for orienting with us.
Yes.
And we will see you on the podcast for real.
A to Z.